everybody. This is Myrna Clayton, founder and executive director of SHOWAbility. We empower talented folks, talented performing artists across the disability spectrum. We're excited about this particular day, this particular month, especially because it allows those of us who are in the arts and advocacy and accessibility to talk about ADA, to talk about political things. Whoa, yeah. So excited that you're here. Oh my gosh, we've got a great guest for you today. And but before I get into any of that, you guys, Showability is at showability.org. You can follow us on any social media. We're excited that you're here. Thank you so very much for being here. We have our tech guru, our tech extraordinaire, Gary Harris, who's going to talk with you guys a little bit about what to expect if there are any challenges or anything. So, Gary, why don't you just go on and do what you do?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy to be here with you on this special show. Got Representative Bruce going to be on here. We already talked to him. He's a lot of fun. If you wouldn't mind muting your microphone or your audio while our speaker is talking, that will help with the background noise. It'll make it so we can hear him much better without any interruptions. If you get kicked off of the meeting for any reason, just log back in. Even though my picture will be off, I'll be in the background watching the chat box and the entry to the meetings. I'll let you right back in. So click right back on that link. And if you have any technical issues that I could help you with, just type them in the box and I'll try to help you out with them. That's it. Y'all have a good time.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. You guys, as Gary let the cat out of the bag, I wasn't trying to let that be known just yet, but proudly representing District 61 in the Georgia House of Representatives is State Representative Roger Bruce. You guys, his district includes City of South Fulton, North Atlanta, Douglas County, and Cobb County. Representative Bruce was elected back at first in 2003 and has been reelected every 2 years since then. Y'all, that says a whole lot. We're going to talk about that. But every 2 years since 2003. What? So during his time in office, Representative Bruce has focused on issues related to children with special needs, the aging, education, working families, economic development, voting rights, and criminal justice. You guys, also something you may not have known is that Representative Bruce is a survivor of a brain tumor. Representative Bruce acquired disabilities for a period of time and had to relearn how to walk and talk. He has since become a concerned and committed disability community advocate, and we appreciate him for that. I am thrilled to welcome State Representative Roger Bruce, and thank you for appearing, sir, on Pathways as our pathway guest for July.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yes, yes,
I'm still
yes.
learning the technology here.
Hey, you're doing great. You're doing amazing, as a matter of fact. Let me also say happy 30th anniversary to you for your service to the citizens in District 61. What? 30 years?
No,
Every
not,
2 years.
not 30 years. It's 20 years.
Oh, wait a minute. Hello. 20 years. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Look, we're going to make it 30. We're going to make it
All
30 for you.
right.
Being reelected every 2 years is significant, and it speaks to your character. It speaks to the confidence of your constituents that they have in you, and truly also the respect that your colleagues in the legislation have in you. So thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you. 20 years elected for anything is significant, and we appreciate you for that.
And I appreciate the opportunity to come on. You have a very important topic, and as you know, it's near and dear to my heart. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Now, I got to tell you, now how you got here is special. You do realize that we could have invited lots of different legislators to be here on this significant month. But you, sir, were invited through a strong recommendation from our board chair, Norma Stanley.
Okay.
So position has privilege.
I understand.
Norma said that she met you about 20 years ago, so right when you were just getting started. Um, when, along with you being state representative, you were an executive at Atlanta Life Insurance, and you
Correct.
were supporting a supporter and a board advisor of a nonprofit called All Children Are Special, that was created around providing child care support for parents with children with disabilities. And
Right.
so you remember that?
I do.
Very
That's how I met her and the other young lady. They came to the office and they got my attention.
awesome, awesome. Now, before we get into your pathways, I want to tell a little bit about ADA. So the folks that are listening, that all of us, you, me, and our audience are on the same page as it relates to ADA. Because, interestingly, people hear Americans with Disabilities Act or ADA, they don't necessarily know what it's about. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take a few minutes just to go to that. Is that okay?
It's your show. I'm with you.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, was signed into law just 33 years ago, and that's why I'm getting the 30 years. 33 years ago by President George Bush, and it prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities in several areas, including employment, transportation, public accommodations, communications, and access to state and local government programs and services. But y'all, ADA's pathway in the United States began way before 1990. People with disabilities began to challenge social barriers that excluded them from their communities. And parents of children with disabilities began to fight against the exclusion and segregation of their children. And while ADA is a tremendous human rights achievement for people with disabilities, it is one that the disability community does not take for granted, because the fight is not over. The fight for equity, inclusion, and accessibility continues today. And for the most part, and for most people, ADA focuses primarily on building code compliance. And that is a huge hot button for us. It is not designed or centered on the needs of the human being. Nowadays, it seems that it's taken for granted. But let's be clear, joggers, folks that are jogging up and down the streets, parents with strollers, and senior citizens with their roller walkers would not be benefiting from the ramps, the large bathroom stalls, or the curb cuts without the Americans with Disabilities Act. It did not exist, and those things did not exist before ADA. And so this month, our conversation is about process and process and pathway. And we are thrilled to have Representative Bruce. So, sir, before we get into the pathways and the process, tell me a little bit about you. Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Harlem, New York. Uh,
Okay,
I was born in Harlem Hospital, the original Harlem Hospital,
okay,
and grew up in the St. Nick projects. Part of the time, and another part of the time was in the Bronx with my aunt. And one thing kind of led to another, and I ended up at a military school in Virginia, St. Emma Military Academy, which was an all-Black military school founded by Catholic nuns. And it was located in a little town, probably about as big as your bedroom, seems like, Powhatan, Virginia, and outside of Richmond. And when I finished there, I ended up at Morehouse here in Atlanta.
okay,
And one thing led to another as relates to the political process. I met a gentleman that I became very close to, Maynard Jackson. And when he ran for office, I was very involved in his campaign. And then as time went on, and I saw all the wonderful things that he was doing, I was kind of motivated to try it myself.
wow.
And
Well, wait, because I want, before we go into that, let me ask you, because you're in life, and you were in life insurance too, right?
at the same time,
At the same time, so you came down to you came down from New York through Virginia to Atlanta, going to Morehouse. You decided to hang out. You liked it, so you decided to stay in Atlanta. And got with Mayor Jackson,
He
and
wasn't the mayor yet. At the time, he wasn't the mayor.
okay,
I
okay,
was
talk
I
us through
was
that.
still a student, and he
Okay,
decided to run for mayor. And I organized the students in the Atlanta University Center in support of his campaign.
awesome.
And then he won. I graduated. I went to work actually immediately from Morehouse. I went to work for the phone company, and they sent me down to Macon, Georgia, which was kind of interesting. You know, going from Harlem, New York to Macon, Georgia, that was definitely a culture shock, as you might imagine.
I can imagine.
And but that was during you were talking about affirmative action. That was during a period of time when the courts had ordered that you had to promote a certain number of minorities in order to for your company to comply. I don't
Okay,
know if you remember that. Do you remember that?
no,
Uh,
that was a little
well,
bit before
yeah.
me.
Okay. Well, there was a period of time when companies were not required to have an equal employment policy. And what I found out is that, after the fact, that the phone company in Macon had no African American managers at all. And they had never had them. And they sent me down there to promote me. And I didn't know that at the time. I found all the stuff out afterwards. But they sent me there to promote me because they didn't have anybody there. And they could not promote any of the white employees until they had promoted a black one. So they didn't have one. And so I got there, and I might have been there for about 3 months. And they called me in and started telling me all these great and wonderful things about me. And for that reason, we get ready to make you a manager. And I'm like, oh, they get ready to kill me down here in Macon, Georgia. And that's when I realized what was going on. And they asked me if I had anything I wanted to say. I guess I was a smart aleck even back then, but they asked me if I had anything I wanted to say. And I said, yeah, I do. You know, all that stuff that you just said about me, I haven't been here long enough to show that I could do any of that stuff.
Okay,
But I know that I can. And if not for affirmative action, I would have never gotten an opportunity to do it. So I don't feel bad about being promoted, because if I'm not promoted, you can't get promoted. That's the law. And so if you work with me, I'll show you that I can do all of those things that you just said. And so I did that. And it was interesting. I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to hush so that you can keep asking your questions. But
that's
uh,
fine.
there, there was one lady that came up to me after I made my little spiel, and she told me that she was going to be indispensable to my success.
Okay,
And we all got good grandmama stories, right? Well, grandmama's story here was she had a test for indispensability, and the test was, I told the lady, I said, go get a cup of water. Symbolically, I said, this cup of water is all of us. We're in this together. We're in this cup. We can't get out. We're all in here together. I said, now put your finger in that water and mix it up real good so that everybody knows that you're here. And she did that. And I said, okay, now take your finger out of the water. I said, the size of the hole that you left in that water shows how indispensable you are to this team. I didn't have any more trouble out of her.
okay. Because
There
the
wasn't
size of
any
the
hole
hole
in
that
that water.
disappeared.
There, no hole in the water.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
and that's kind of the way I function. I do not feel that I'm indispensable to any team. You get in there, you contribute, and you don't become so vain that you think that you are indispensable, because it will continue without you. But you got to go in there and do your part.
Wow. So then you went from Macon.
I went from
There-
Macon to Griffin, Georgia. They sent me to Griffin to do the same thing they did in Macon.
Oh wow.
But it was a different role. They didn't have anybody in Griffin to promote, and then ultimately I ended up back here. But I ended up in human resources, which ended up being my career for about 25, 30 years.
Okay.
And when I got back to Atlanta, what got me away from the phone company is that they were having they were going through the same kind of thing in Atlanta, trying to promote African Americans, make it equitable. And they wanted me to go to a class where they were teaching Black people how to get along with white people. I mean, it was a class that they had.
Wow.
And in the class, they asked me if I was invited. And I don't remember everything from back then, but I remember certain things
Sure.
that were impactful and made me do things. But they asked me if I was invited to a white manager's house for dinner, what should I expect to eat? And the answer was whatever they fixed. That was the answer. But then they asked me if I invite a white person to my house for dinner, what should I fix? And the answer to that was whatever the white person wanted.
What?
And that's what I said. I went nuclear. I said, probably I'm not going to invite none of y'all to my house if I got to do all that. And but that's what really got me, tuned into the reality is that equity was not there. And it was not there in that instance, it was a Black-white issue. And as time went on, I started, meeting people in your field and finding that it was also a Black-white, handicapped, non-handicapped kind of environment out here. And then, as you mentioned earlier, I was giving a speech at the school board trying to get a new school. And during that speech, I felt something pop in my head. It didn't hurt, but it just felt kind of strange. And I finished the speech actually, and went to my wife, who happened to be in the audience that day, and I said, God is good, because she didn't normally come to those events, but she was there that night. And I went to her and I said, something doesn't feel right. I think I need to go to the hospital. And, man, we don't volunteer to go to the hospital for some crazy reason, but we don't. But that night I did. And we got over to the hospital, which was right near the school board meeting. And they were taking me through the do you have insurance routine. And in the midst of that, apparently I just passed out.
Mm.
And so everything I'm telling you from this point is what my wife told me happened.
Okay.
She said there was no neurologist on duty at that hospital. So they put me in an ambulance and they took me down to Atlanta Medical downtown. We got to Atlanta Medical and the neurologist didn't know what was going on and told her that he wanted to do exploratory surgery on my brain and then get back to her. And she was like, nah, you ain't exploring his brain. We're going to another hospital.
Right.
And so he
Thank you
told
for
her,
the advocate.
yeah, he told her that that if she took me to another hospital, I'd probably be dead by the time I got there. But she said, we'll just take our chances because you might kill him with your surgery. And so we get to down to Emory, and they figured out what was going on. I had something called an arterial vascular malformation, AVM, something from birth that I didn't even know existed.
Wow.
And you have arteries and veins and capillaries, throughout your body. But in my brain, I was born without the capillary that separates the arteries and veins. That's kind of how it goes.
Wow.
So over time, with nothing to keep them separated, they merged together and formed a mass. And then the blood couldn't get through because of the mass. And when the blood couldn't get through, it popped. And that's what happened. That's what I felt, pop. So they kept me in a coma for about a month and a half.
Really?
And when I came out of the coma, what they ended up doing was taking the mass and cutting it off on this side and then cutting off on this side and removing the mask. And then they put the two back together. But with them being in a knot basically right there, no blood could pass through there. So that's what caused me to have some issues, because if there's no blood going through a certain part of your body, then
Yeah.
that piece is dead for all practical purposes. So that piece of my brain right along here is technically dead. And so when I woke up, it was a weird feeling because I didn't know how long I had been knocked out, first of all. My wife said the first thing I said was, "Did we get to school?" Because that was the last thing I remembered. And we did, by the way. And but the with the arteries and veins, like I said, being uh, basically tied up, um, I was having difficulty remembering things. I couldn't, I was going through something they call deja vu syndrome.
Mm,
I don't know if you know what that is, but
no.
um, I was able to see my wife walk out of a room. I didn't see her walk back in, but I saw her walk out again. So basically, what was happening is that things that I would see would repeat themselves over and over and over again until something else happened, and then that would repeat itself over and over again. It was
Wow.
the craziest feeling you can imagine.
Can't
I,
even imagine.
yeah,
How did it feel when you were going through that? What was that?
I,
What
I
was that like?
feel like I felt like I was getting ready to kick the bucket, to be honest with you.
Mm,
And I was, saying all my prayers and making my peace
sure,
and
sure.
telling all those I needed to tell that I loved them, and I thought it was over.
Wow.
And so I went through that, but at the same time, I was also going through. It was weird because I could still write
Huh.
just as fine as as normal, but then I couldn't read what I wrote,
Wow.
and I couldn't read. And a lot of people knew that I had been sick, but they didn't know how sick I was.
Hmm.
And all of this was happening at the same time that my son was getting ready to graduate from high school.
Wow.
And they knew I was in the hospital, but then they knew I was home. And they invited me to be the guest speaker at graduation. And it was like, well, I can't write a speech because I can't read what I wrote. And I'm
Wow.
going through deja vu syndrome. And I still had a little tube coming out of my head, because they were draining fluids out. So I was going through all of that. And but my son, and this is important, my son, is the one that really got me back, got my head right. And the way that happened, my wife was like, "No, you can't speak it. You can't do it." My friends were, "You cannot do that. How are you going to do it? You can't read. You can't do this." I mean, they were telling me all the reasons why I couldn't do this.
Sure.
My son came to me, who was graduating. He said, "Dad, I hear mommy telling you what you can't do. I hear your friends telling you what you can't do. But you always told me nobody could set my limitations for me.
Okay,
I'm
Dad.
the only one that can set my limitations. So if you decide you don't want to do this, I'm okay with that. But if you're not doing it because mommy said you can't do it, or because your friend said you can't do it, then you haven't been telling me the truth." That got to
Ooh.
me. That was deep, and it got to me. And
Yes. Yes.
so I decided I was going to do something because I was not going to disappoint my son.
Absolutely.
And so I agreed to go. I told him, that I was going through some things. Um, and Shirley Franklin and um, Kasim Reed were also on the program that day. And we're sitting up there up front. My son was sitting next to me because I told him he had to sit there in case something happened. He had to be there with me. And they said, "Fine." And I heard them introduce me. There was zero reaction from the audience, nothing. And, because typically people applaud and all that kind of
Yeah.
nothing. Then I heard him introduce me again. That was that deja vu
Deja
syndrome.
vu. Yes.
And the third time they introduced me, they only introduced me once. I just heard it 3 times.
Wow.
And I heard the reaction, the applause. I cannot tell you to this day what the heck I said. I just got up there and started talking. And I told my wife, I said, "Sit where I can see you. And if I'm going off the deep end or saying something crazy, just do like that, and I'll know to shut up and sit down." And but she didn't, and I finished the speech. My son said, "You did great." I have no idea what I said, and but they said that I did great, and so from that point forward, I just concluded that I'm the only one that's going through this, and others are not seeing what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking. About 9 months later, it was like my brain rebooted, and the deja vu syndrome went away. Um, my memory started to get a little better. I still had trouble with it. I had to go through and learn how to read over again. And and what I learned in that process is that if I heard something, I got it, just as if I had read it. If I tried to read it, it was more difficult
Mm.
to do that. And even now, I'm gonna be candid with you. Even to this day, if if I read something, I have to read it a couple of times to make sure that I'm really understanding what it is that I'm reading. So I listen to a lot of things,
Okay.
and I get it the same way. I like to read, so I will continue to do that. And but in that whole process, the biggest thing that came out of all of that is that we have a lot of disabled people out here, or people that we call disabled. And I don't like to use that word, to be honest with you, because disabled means that they can't do something. And in my mind, you can pretty much, there are certain things that, some people can't do, but there are other things that they can do. And so while you may not be able to do all the things that so-called normal people do, you are capable of doing something. And I can give you a really good example of that.
Okay.
Because one of the, when you're in the role that I was in, people come and ask you for money all the time. And I had someone come and ask me in my capacity as vice president of the company, if if I could donate, it was like $5,000, whatever it was, to a handicap group. And I said, well, tell me what the handicap is. And they said basically that the group could only do one thing. The people in the group can only do one thing. They could pick something up and move it from here to there. That was about it. But at the time, I was vice president for a hospital association, a hospital group. And if you know, when you go in the hospital, they give you a little packet with toothpaste, toothbrush, all this other stuff. And I asked them, I said, if I give you this $5,000, you're going to come again next year and ask me for another 5,000. And they said, yeah, because we're going to need it again. I said, okay, well, I got an idea. I'm going to give you this $5,000, but we're going to create a conveyor belt with this $5,000. And toothpaste, toothbrush, all the stuff, that's what's going to come down. I mean, the box that all the stuff goes in, that's what's going to come down the conveyor belt. And when it comes down that conveyor belt, I want the people that you represent to do what you told me they could do. They can take this item, put it in the box. Another box comes, they take and put in the box. And when you got to the end, you had your toothpaste, your toothbrush, all the stuff that you needed at the end. And then the machine took it and wrapped it up. And I gave it to them and I said, now you go out and you sell this to hospitals. Gave them contacts at hospitals that they could reach. And the hospitals started buying it from them. They made so much daggone money, I never saw them again. But the point was they could do something and they did it. And they did not become dependent on somebody else for their help.
That's a wonderful, wonderful thing that happened.
Yeah,
Very, very wonderful. Wow. And to see their uniqueness, their capabilities, as opposed to looking at what they cannot do.
exactly.
And that's what everybody wants. No one wants to be looked at for their weaknesses or their, and that's the human connectivity that we have. No one wants to be focused on what you cannot do.
That's exactly
Everyone
right.
wants everyone wants to be appreciated for what they can do at whatever level they can do it. Appreciate me for what I can do. That's
Hmm.
that's awesome. Now I want to shift to specifically to some ADA things, and tell me this, why do you see ADA and legislative support as so significant?
It's not just, that I see the ADA, it's the people. You know, what I'm looking at are people who have need. And they, for whatever reason, I never understood what it was, but they shut down all of the facilities in Georgia that were designed to help people with mental illness. And in my heart, I believe that mental illness is just like having pneumonia. It's something else that needs to be medically treated. And when they decide that medical illnesses are not really illnesses, that it's something else, and we shouldn't take care of it like we take care of measles and mumps and whatever else is out there, that disturbs me, because I think that it is equally as important to deal with the mental health that people are going through. And in this day and time, there's so many things that affect your mental health. Um, and to act like it's not there, I think is a huge, huge mistake.
That, yes, that was the Olmsted Act, that they closed the institutions because, yes, the institutions, people were just being housed there. They weren't being helped. They were just being housed and
Well, but now they're up under a bridge and they're not getting anything.
anything. And so so neither one are the solution. And so we need a solution, because they weren't getting helped in the institutions. They're not getting help in the under the bridges. And so, okay, and they're not getting helped in the jails either. And so there's an opportunity, versus the problem. There's an opportunity for support for these human beings that
Mhm.
need support.
Correct.
And so whatever that is and however that is, and so, there's some really smart people that know this, but not me. But certainly there's a huge opportunity, and to look at it in that way, um, to find the opportunity to find the solution for the persons, because we know the institutions weren't it. We know that under the bridge is not it. And so, okay, so what is it? We know the prisons and the jails are not it. So what is it? There are families who are dealing with this every day. And so if we first talk to the families, if legislators, and I'm saying legislators because legislators make the laws. And so if legislators or
Yeah, but
policymakers,
I wouldn't depend totally on government to solve this problem,
okay,
um, because government is not designed to solve all problems. We should help, no question about it. But just like we found a way for those individuals to be beneficial to those companies, to those hospitals, we have to, just make a little more effort to find out what people are capable of doing and to give them some value, and have that value be respected and have that value be purchased by these companies, these corporations out there. I don't know all that your organization does. I know it does a lot, but I would suspect that if you would say, okay, tomorrow, I'm gonna find some group that calls themselves uh, dependent and help make them independent. And you get organizations all over the place saying that we're going to find what they have the capability of doing and take that capability and sell it to companies and and get those companies to buy that value and then use the money from that to take care of those people.
I love it. Yep, because what I just heard you say was use that company to buy that value, meaning the value of the employees, the value of the workers, the
Mhm.
use someone to buy that value, um,
Exactly.
and support that value. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I've got more questions, but I want to just kind of open it up if there are others that, because I'm not seeing that there are questions. I think what you're saying is so interesting, and I think people are probably like me, like, oh, okay. This is a lot of good stuff, you know. And so don't want to, but I want to open it up just in case, because I'll keep going because I'm because you spoke about showability, and I want to share with you a little bit about showability and what we do because we're being contacted by casting agents looking for actors on the disability spectrum, and we're also doing programming, about to go into elementary schools and work with school-age kids who are not considered when it comes to talent and opportunities, and oftentimes because maybe the child does not, or the student does not sign up for programs because they don't want to be singled out because of their difference. And so we tap into areas that kind of deal more with the performing arts area, because as a performer, I've experienced, and you've experienced in your lifetime, that it's the arts, especially the performing arts, that lead in social change. It was Lena Horne and Ray Charles who talked about, not performing in front of a segregated audience anymore, and that meant that they were going to be cutting their money. And
Hmm.
so there's Stevie Wonder. We don't think about him as having a disability, but all day long he has one. Why does he
Right.
need glasses? Blind people don't need glasses, but it's for us, not the general population, not for him. And so there are some things that, the issues and the problems and the challenges are with the general population, not with the person, as you just indicated. It's not that they got a problem. It's just different in how they look at things, and how their abilities and their capabilities are very different.
Hmm.
And so, and we also we have an inclusive chorus, and we have social media ambassadors, and we're involving people in doing some things to showcase what they can do in the space of arts and entertainment, because there's an opportunity oftentimes with the disability community. People don't think about
You know,
things.
but if you think about what you just said,
Hmm.
I'm not totally familiar with all of the pieces of that community.
Hmm.
But I would suspect that in order to produce a show or something, it's a whole lot more than just actors.
Absolutely.
You got a gazillion things that have to be done, even down to somebody, combing somebody's hair. Again, I would find what in that spectrum of activity that it takes to produce something can someone who is different, what can they do in that spectrum that has value? And then you buy the value.
I I love it, and that's that HR man coming out, that HR guy,
Mhm.
that HR guy coming out, and I love it. I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it. Um, I also wanted to just kind of, because I do want to, because of your legislative status, I do want to talk about some things and just kind of see and hear about what legislation you put forth or supported for individuals with disabilities and families of children with disabilities. Can you share some of that over the 20 years?
Yeah, again, the legislation was designed to treat people um, in a way that they are able to, like I said, maximize on whatever their value is. And so, the laws that I kind of focused on were things that prevented people from saying you're disabled and therefore you can't apply. And again, I'll give you another example of how I applied that. And a lot of this stuff, like I said, you don't have to be in office to do some of this stuff. But at one point, I was vice president of HR for Burger King Corp.
Okay.
And I was asked to, I had gone by to visit one of the stores, and there was a lady in a wheelchair that had applied for work. And they told her she could not work in the restaurant because she was in a wheelchair, and if she was behind the counter, she would be below the counter and people couldn't see her. So they wouldn't give her a job.
Mm,
And I said, well, is she otherwise qualified? Is there any other reason why she can't work here? And they couldn't give me one.
mm.
So I went down to the Home Depot and I got a saw. And I came back and I chopped that counter down and lowered it. And I said, can you see her now? And he said, well, yeah, we can. I said, okay, can she work here now? Well, yeah, I guess she can. And that's what I'm saying. You have to, find ways. And like I said, legally, I worked and passed all the laws that I could related to open discrimination. But in addition to that, you have to educate people, and you got to educate your colleagues in the General Assembly, to stop looking at people as disabled and figure out how to able them. And that's what I did.
That's so powerful. I just want to read some of the comments on the side. Excited that you're here. They really love the stories that you're telling. And someone says, "Well, I was asking if there are any more questions." Like, keep going. they want you. They want you to keep going. So that's pretty awesome.
But I'd love to hear from people. I don't know if they, because I can talk about all of the things in my experience, but I'd like to hear somebody that has an issue, and let's see if we can solve it. Let's see if we can come up with some other idea. That makes sense.
That makes a whole lot of sense. Well, let me just kind of for one of the persons who asked the question on the side, Dana, you said keep going. So
Okay. Of course we always got issues.
okay.
I'm really fighting the issue right now. I mean, you said on public premises that ADA can only do public, and I wanted to ask a question. They get my attention. Why isn't it private? Also, because I live on a private property, and it's a lot of people that don't look like us here, and all they do is like complain on me with my wheelchair. They let's say I feel sick one day and the bus not picking me up or the car is taking me, but they can't get my wheelchair in the car. So, or the bus might be taking forever to come, so I need somewhere to sit down. And when they come, I have to hurry up and get out to the bus. So I have my wheelchair like in the corner out the way, or just use it to go downstairs. They complain on me with that. They like I have to put my wheelchair in the house, don't leave it out. I'm like, the wheelchair is a part of me. On some days I need it. And they say, well, we can't have that. You're gonna have to have somebody to put it up.
Where do you live?
The Vanderbilt.
On Lennox Road.
On Lennox Road out in Buckhead. And so if I'm hearing her right, they're telling her that she can't have her wheelchair visible.
Right.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly.
Okay, but do people have cars visible?
Yes, sir.
And so your wheelchair is your car to some degree. Is that correct? That's how you get around in your wheelchair.
Right, you're right. But I don't know how. I wouldn't know how to get fight that matter, because I mean,
no, what I was telling you to do, who is telling you that you can't have your wheelchair exposed? Is it the place where you are living saying that? Who's saying it?
yes, my landlord and manager, they told me the HOA and everybody that lives here is calling him complaining my wheelchair being left out and stuff like that. And I don't understand. I can't even put nothing in my parking spot, but everybody else do.
And that would be my argument. If my wheelchair, which is my car, can't be exposed, then these cars should not allow to be exposed either. And that's my transportation. And if I were you, I would contact whoever your city council person is out there, and have that city council person talk on your behalf to the landlord, and force the landlord to, if you can't put it there, then they need to come up with a solution. And maybe the solution is to build some kind of a parking space, if you want to call it that, outside your door for your chair. But that's would be my first step. I would contact whoever your city council person is. Do you know who your city council person is?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay, well, that would be the first step. You need to find out who that is and contact them. And if you hang on a second. You have my office number, and I never call my office, so I don't know it, but
Yes,
give
we have
her
it. We can make sure that she gets that.
give her my office number and have her call, and we'll help her find out who her city council person is.
That would
Oh,
be great.
thank you, thank you, thank you,
Okay.
That'll be
thank you so much.
All right.
wonderful. In the next few minutes, is there anybody else that has a question? If not, I don't know. I can actually call out. I'm sorry. Was somebody about to say something? Sorry.
I have a question. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Bruce? My name is Demario. I'm the new program associate for SHOWAbility. Thank you
Hey.
for the wonderful story you told. Super inspiring. I was just curious about, I kind of came in where you were talking about the tolerance class you had to take and just the change that happened to you after your medical incident. I'm just wondering, what were some successful strategies and changes that you made to kind of like how they had you go to this class? I don't know how effective that class was you went to, but what are some successful strategies you
You
discovered?
talking about where they won't teach me how to get along with white folks?
Right. So,
The motivation that I got from that, it pissed me off so much. Excuse me.
so taking that fire, how can you apply like that, like bringing just strategies for bringing awareness to communities like Dana was just telling a story of how people are intolerant of her, how she has to get around and get in and out of her place. So in your work, what are some successful strategies you think you've been a part of or have seen as far as bringing awareness to groups who were previously unaware of the kind of double standard that they're...
The biggest strategy for me is to be straightforward with people. I'm just, if somebody says to you, and this is a little off topic, but how many times does somebody come up to you and they say, "Oh man, you don't remember me, do you?" Has that ever happened to you? And what do you do? "Oh yeah, I remember you."
yeah.
And then what's the next thing they say? "Well, where you remember me from?"
What's
And
my
you don't have a clue. You don't have a clue. But if you had told that person, instead of saying, "Yeah, I remember you," when you didn't, if you said, "Well, you're right. I haven't seen you in a long time. I don't remember you. Help me out. Talk to me. Tell me how I should remember you." That way, you didn't lie to the person and you didn't mislead them into believing something that wasn't true. And you have to apply the same thing. When people come up to you and they ask, how this person is doing or whatever it is, and we try to make some excuse for how they feel. The reality, they may not feel good. And we need to understand why they don't feel good and then address the why. You follow what I'm saying? We got to be straightforward and direct. Because, when you beat around the bush, or if you say something that is not accurate, then you can't solve the problem. And I know there've been a whole lot of days when people will come up to you and they say, "Well, how you feeling?" And your first reaction, "Oh, I feel fine," but you feel like crap. But their expectation, because you said you felt fine, was that you could do everything that they expect you to do. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
So be direct with people and tell them the truth. And a lot of times people don't want to know the truth. So if you tell them the truth and they don't want to know it, then they're probably not going to come and ask you again. And then you won't have to waste your time with them. I know that sounds bad, but
no, that's honest. I mean, your story you told made me think of how, when you think about race relations, how Black people are sometimes burdened with trying to teach other people how why our history is important, why we may have certain emotions or anger or reactions to certain things. So,
You know, you're a Black man. I mean, I know I've been asked 100 times, why am I so mad? I said, why shouldn't I be mad? You know, look what you've done. You know, and I'll go down the whole list of the things that they've done. I said, now, if that happened to you, would you be mad? Well, probably, yeah, I would. Okay, so don't ask me that again.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you. And I'm thoughtful of the time. And and Representative Bruce, we're so thrilled that you are here. You are here. You are here. With our last minute or so, I want to ask you a couple of quick questions that are not off topic, but they are off topic. And so, tell us, what is your proudest moment in your journey in life so far?
My proudest moment is my children.
Mm.
Um, and they're doing well. I grew up in a family where I knew my father, but I didn't had zero interaction with him, no relationship with him. And I wanted to make sure when my children were born, not only did I want that family, but I wanted them to know who their daddy was. And I have a great relationship with my children, and that is probably my proudest moment. And
That's wonderful. So change that generational thing around. You
yeah,
intentionally
yeah,
with self.
you know, because you know, a lot of times people will say, well, you know, my father didn't do this, my father didn't do that, and they would accept an excuse for me being like him because he was like that. And my choice was everything that I wanted from my father that I didn't get, that's what I give to my kids. And you know, so my my opinion is just because your daddy was a certain way don't mean you have to be that way. And just be the opposite. Use whatever you use as an example, everything that he didn't do, and that's what you do.
That's awesome. Okay, I've got a legislative question. Um, what is your dream legislative bill? And it doesn't have to deal with ADA, but what's your dream thing that you would like to accomplish in moving forward in Georgia?
You know, I don't know that you can sum it up with one bill, you know,
Okay.
because that's just not the way the system works.
Okay.
But the reality is that I would love to see a period of time in my life, I doubt that I will, where people don't judge you based on the color of your skin, because it makes zero sense, you know. And I think about all the white folks that try to judge me because I'm Black, but they sitting out in the sun trying to get a tan. You know, the logic doesn't make sense. Your brain is your brain doesn't really recognize your skin color other than, you know, to shield you from the heat and things like that. And that's what it's about. You know, I'd like to see, you know, people just, you know, I wouldn't even say everybody can't love everybody, but the reality is that there's no reason for us to be making decisions about a person's existence based on the color of their skin. That's stupid.
You know, one of the things that Judy Human, icon in the disability community, said that they followed when they were fighting for 504 and eventually ADA. They followed the civil rights template to the letter, in terms of what they did, because equally the disability community is like, why are you focusing on something that's who I am.
Yep.
That's who I am. And so don't fight me because of that. Don't think it gets to your point of value.
Mm-hmm.
Value for what I can do. Get
Yep.
place value of that's the value right there. I love it. I
Yeah,
love it. I love it. I love
I mean, just about everybody can do something. I mean, I know we have some people who, you know, are you know, going through some things that make it very, very difficult. But I just look, even if the person can't walk, they can't talk, they can't do this, they can't do that. What they can do is give you inspiration, you know, for a way, finding a way to help them. You know,
it.
if
Yeah.
nothing else, they can still give you inspiration.
Yes.
And we just got to stop finding fault in whatever and find ways to find a positive and a way to resolve whatever the issue is.
I love it. I love it. Well, we've come to that time, and before I go into just the last little bit, I have one last question, and that is, I ask everyone this because I know I ask questions, and persons in the audience will ask questions. Is there anything that I did not ask that you'd like to share?
Only to the extent that I think that all of us, when you wake up in the morning, if everybody just for 30 seconds would say, what can I do today to make life better for somebody else? And it could be something as simple as the next person that I see that looks on the street that looks hungry, I'm going to buy him a hamburger, or I'm going to do something. If every one of us did that, imagine how much better the world would be. And I know that sounds real, but I mean that. When I go downtown on the way to that Capitol and I see people living on the street, it bothers me like to no end. And and I'll stop, and I'll give them water, I'll do stuff. I can't do it for all of them, but if everybody on their way to work tomorrow, if you go downtown and you see somebody in the street, do something to help them.
That's powerful. And yes, it starts with the individual. If each one person does
Yep.
one thing for one person,
That's it.
it becomes a wonderful passing it forward,
Yep.
it forward.
And
I
it
love
doesn't have to be anything real big and dramatic. It could be a bottle of water.
I love it. I love it. Well, Representative Bruce, thank you so very much. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. Look, I wish if we had those applause monitors, I'd be I'd press the button ding, 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 to do the applause monitors. Um, Gary, do you want to close us out? How do people reach you, uh, Representative Bruce?
You can go to my website, just go to rogerbruce.net.
Okay.
And you can find all kinds of ways to reach me.
Okay. Awesome. 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 Awesome.
Okay.
Gary?
I am putting rogerbruce.net in the chat. Thank you, everyone. This has been great. Representative Bruce, it was a pleasure listening to your stories. That was very inspirational. Everybody, check out the SHOWAbility page for our next coming workshop, Zoom meeting. This inspirational meetings don't end. Everyone just keep coming back and representing, and we can do like Dr. Bruce, or like Representative Bruce said, we can help everybody, and we feel better about each other. I think if we do that.
Mm-hmm. We
Awesome.
will.
Yep.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much. Next month, every fourth Sunday, 4 o'clock, we're here. And so we appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here. Gary, give us some tablet music.
Thank you, everybody. Y'all take care.